Frédéric Roskop, welcome to the Sick Boot Camp podcast.
Thank you, Richard.
So it's really cool to have you here in studio. As I shared with you before, you're actually our first in-studio guest. And it's interesting that you flew in from the UK by way of France. So you're a true multinational guest. So why don't you first share with our listeners and our viewers where you came in from today?
Thank you, Richard, for having me, and hi to all your listeners. I did come from London. One night ago, I came to visit a few friends in Manhattan, do a couple of jobs, and decided to come and visit you in Long Island, as I've got many patients based in Long Island and in the Hamptons. So I thought it was the opportunity to see what is the state of Lyme's disease, and or one of them in the US and in the world. And very excited to be here among you, your colleagues, and your listeners.
Well, thank you. So why don't you build out your background so we can introduce you, not just where you're from, but your background. So where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And what was the process you went through to ultimately become an osteopath?
So I am French. I was born in Paris, but at the age of 3 years old, I was already a little bit unwell. So parents took me to the psychotherapist, and I was not a sleeper. I was sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night. I was definitely what we would call these days an ADD or ADHD patient, and very kindly at the time, so I'm 50, so we are talking 47 years ago, the doctor very kindly said to my parents, you need to move out of a big city, need to make sure that your son is getting the opportunity to run in the countryside. And so I was raised back at that time from the age of 3 years old in the Dordogne, which is in the middle of France, which is a little bit like Connecticut or Long Island, lots of woods, lots of long grass.
So is it more suburban or rural? I mean, how would you describe it?
Yes, exactly. I'm like, you are completely in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
In the middle of France, in one of the most beautiful part of the world. And I was raised there from the age of 3 years old to the age of 18. And then from 18 years old, I went into studying medicine, osteopathy, and became an osteopath. There was an interest in the medical world, as well as science, physics, and being a businessman was quite a big interest. But I was very sensitive already around 15, 16. My parents went into bankruptcy, being businessmen themselves. And I was like, you know what, I'm heartbroken for them. I don't want to be heartbroken again. So I went into the medical field because very simply, when you are sensitive, you don't want to repeat what hurt you. But then I didn't know I had Lyme's disease, but very simply looking back, I had Lyme's disease certainly from the age of 8 or 9 years old.
So let's build that out. So you spent the entirety of your childhood in France, early on in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, in Paris. But that was for a very short time during your first 3 years of life, and then you moved to the most beautiful section of the more rural portion of France. So talk to us about when you first started to feel unwell, and what type of medical professionals were your parents taking you to, and what kind of diagnoses were you getting?
So 47 years ago, I was really raised in the countryside, and my parents working in the city nearby. We were left alone from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 p.m. at night, and school finishing at 3 o'clock. Very simply, you were helping the farmers to collect the cows and collect the eggs and helps with the vineyards. And it was a really beautiful childhood. But do you encounter different ticks and insects, or anything which can bite you, really, from spiders to ticks? And by the age of 7, 8 years old, or I remember being 7, 8 years old, being heavily stung, covered by different insects, which at the time nobody knew they were ticks. But I was covered in ticks.
And, is this one particular incident, or is this something that was ongoing?
Many times. And the farm lady at the time, I was always saying, she was an old lady, but actually she must have been my age now, 45 to 55.
Old lady.
And she literally was seeing me, and she was like, okay, let's get you undressed. I was 7, 8 years old. She was putting me in those beautiful, what we would call nowadays, fashionable iron bath. And she was taking the brush, and she was like, rubbing all those mosquitoes or ticks and flies and insects off me. And then the next day was like, okay, I'm covered, all red. And my mom was like, I don't know what to do. So she was taking me to the doctor. And again, 45 years ago, the doctor was like, oh, he's having an allergic reaction. So we're going to give him antihistamine. And at the time, as you know, the diagnosis of Lyme's disease, that it is in America or in Europe, was very far-fetched in the sense of very difficult to get a practitioner being able to diagnose you or understand what you were suffering from, what you got from those bites.
Well, in fairness to your practitioners, Lyme was newly
Absolutely.
discovered around the time that you were suffering your tick bites. And it certainly was even hard to diagnose in places like Long Island, New York, where I grew up, where I was bitten by ticks often. But what we were most concerned about during my childhood, I'm a bit older than you, was Rocky Mountain spotted fever. That was a tick disease that had been discovered earlier, prior to Lyme. So it's not surprising that the doctors were having some troubles with diagnosing you in France when, the disease had just been uncovered here, actually on Long Island. So you are actually in the true birthplace of Lyme disease, not only because there were some of the early signs of Lyme disease, such as the Montauk knee, which was, one of the earliest descriptions of Lyme disease, but of course the ticks that were ultimately collected from the tick drag and were tested by Willy Bergdorfer to determine what the cause of this disease were. We're actually it was a tick drag, not a long distance from where we are sitting today out on Shelter Island. So it's not surprising that despite having been bitten by ticks and having a number of different signs that you were having an adverse reaction, that your doctors did not know what to do.
Absolutely. I'm not throwing him the stone because I'm a practitioner myself, and I was practicing by the age of 23 osteopathy and became successful definitely before the age of 30 years old. But I recognize that I had Lyme's disease only in my mid-30s. Even so, I was a practitioner. Being a practitioner for more than 10 years, I was suffering with that hidden condition diagnosed by many practitioners with depression or hypochondria. I was seeing all those practitioners all over the world and nobody really knew what was going on.
So let's build that out. Let's build out your symptoms, because you did share with us that you first started to have, some signs of being unwell as early as 3 years old. And your parents, being good people, wanted to make sure that they were able to find the best environment for you to be well. And they moved out of the city and they moved into the countryside. But I don't know, maybe it sounds like they brought you from the frying pan into the fire, because now you're in this rural community, you're spending a lot of time with farmers, and you're getting bitten by ticks. So talk about, you did build out to us this occasion when you were 7 or 8 years old, where you had a number of different ticks on you and they were brushing them off. There were so many. Talked about how many other times you were bitten by ticks, and how did your symptoms develop or change over time before you were diagnosed?
Those episodes of being bitten were relatively common, I would say. Again, because of the environment I was in and being an outdoor child and hyperactive. So all the opportunities to put myself in that situation. Going back to specifically your question, is the first proper symptoms that I would say comes to mind today is the general anesthetic when I was 16 years old. And after that general anesthetic for a broken nose, that's when suddenly I lost a lot of my abilities to concentrate, lost my eyesight in the sense of I needed glasses within a week post-surgery, difficult, to concentrate at school, very difficult to relate to who I was with the world around me as well, like connect with people, connect with what I wanted to do. I was really confused, and it was physical, emotional, mental. That's when I really, looking back, I realized that something switched.
That was the crash.
And then it was really the first crash. And then I was at the time playing volleyball professionally as well. And very simply, I started having what we call Osgood-Schlatter's. So your cartilages, when you grow, they grow in stages. So you need to make sure that you are well for those growth plates to grow accordingly. And from the age of 16, when everything seemed to be okay, suddenly I had Osgood-Schlatter's, which is inflammation of my knees, Scheuermann's disease, which is inflammation of my spine. And I had those accumulation of inflammation, which was unexplained. I was just, okay, I was going to the doctor and they were saying, you've got this symptom, you've got this. So I was diagnosed with lots of different conditions, but never anybody really understood that there was an underlying kind of root cause. And then playing volleyball again professionally by the age of 18, I had my first heart infection. So I had my first pericarditis, 6 in total, the last one in Peru, in the middle of the Amazon, being stung by something in the Amazon itself. I had my first pericarditis, infection and inflammation of the heart, where literally you can't move. You're bent over because you've got an accumulation of fluid around the heart, which impedes the heart to do its normal contraction expansion. And any movement forward are completely limited. So you are bent over like a child, suffering in silence. And I got given antibiotics for a week and it got better. But actually, those infections came back regularly between the age of 18 or 17, 18 till the age of 33. They were my main symptoms. And I would say the hyperactivity and the insomnia, so that kind of neurotic behavior, possibly got worse from the age of 12, 13. Is it again, I mean, I'm a practitioner. So on one side, is it Lyme's disease? Is it the testosterone coming into your body on a system which is not working and then suddenly becoming even more disruptive? There is a bit of confusion there, but I always say it's never one problem. It's always an accumulation of little things which makes big things.
Okay. So between the ages of 3 and 16, you seem to have some general health issues. You're being bitten by ticks many, many times during your time in rural France when you're working on farms. Before the crash when you were 16 years old, were there any symptoms that you now attribute to Lyme disease? Anything that would be typical Lyme disease symptoms as you now know them?
So certainly the fatigue, but again, it's quite a confusion because a lot of people who have got chronic Lyme's disease will say to you, I can't get out of bed bound, and I can't do anything, when actually I was the opposite. I was ADHD, hyperactive, associated to exhaustion. My privilege, and even now, is I sleep 5 hours and everything is fine. That would be the biggest symptom, I would say, is like, I had those crash where it was like, okay, it's 10 o'clock, I need to go to bed, sleep my 5 hours, and then everything is okay. And through the day, it was like activity, lingering fatigue, hyperactivity, lingering fatigue, which a lot of people would describe it as ADD, ADHD, obviously. But for me, it was like definitely the Lyme eating me and beating me up all the time.
Okay. So you have this window of time between the ages of 16 and 18 when you're a professional athlete. What was your symptomology in that window of time prior to you having some form of heart, either pericarditis or Lyme carditis or some other heart-related issues?
The symptoms that we can add as well, thinking about it, is a lot of digestive issues. So a lot of colopathies, what we call irritable bowel syndromes, a lot of blood sugar regulation issues due to the different stresses inside my body. I had as well, which is quite a common symptom associated to Lyme and tick-borne, a lot of visual aura, a lot of eyesight and migraine looking at the lights. I mean, today I would be like, I'm so happy to be able to say, oh, okay, I've got no problem looking at this light. But like literally when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, and even 10 years ago, because it lasted for quite a long time, I was not able to look at any lights for any split of seconds because it was creating this aura.
It was an aura, and you said that it was also causing you to suffer migraines?
Yeah, so actually I never had pain related to migraines, but I just had this kind of visual disturbances.
Okay.
I was lucky.
So you finally have your first pericarditis incident. You are treated with antibiotics. The antibiotics cause you to have a resolution of that issue. So how do things develop from there? What was happening between the ages of 18? And by the way, did this heart related symptom interfere with your ability to perform as a professional athlete? Were you able to go back and perform as a professional volleyball player, or did that have an impact on your career?
Yeah, absolutely. The having Osgood-Schlatter, Sherman's disease, all those kind of aches and pain, the exhaustion, again, a VO2 max. We talk a lot about VO2 max nowadays. The ability for your heart rate to go up was very affected by Lyme's disease. So again, the ability to perform at a high level was really limited after a while.
When did your professional athletic career end?
So literally, I mean, by the age of 17, 18, I was done.
You were done.
Yeah, so I did, high level volleyball, French selections, but never managed to go further.
So how many doctors did you see between the ages of 3 and the ages of 18 where we are now?
Actually, not a lot. Like you said, in France, it was really not known. To me, looking back, I mean, talking about different symptoms, one side of me was definitely on the spectrum, which I believe was certainly due to Lyme's disease as well. So up to 18, some of the symptoms will be that kind of social abilities, and they were really bad to the point where I was happy especially after that surgery where it's that big flare, I was happy to stay in my room and spend hours and hours on my own, and I'd lost really this ability to connect.
So you're again referring to the event where you had the broken nose and you had the anesthetic that ultimately triggered your first crash.
No, absolutely.
So what caused the broken nose? So what was the traumatic event that caused the broken nose? And what was it about the anesthesia that you had taken that you think caused you to have a triggering of your chronic Lyme disease?
So the broken nose, quite a few of them. One was playing volleyball.
Okay.
Quite an obvious one at high level. The second is a funny story where my doctor and my father were playing ping pong. And my dad says to me, "Oh, can you get us some beers?" And it was 10 o'clock at night and the doctor was here playing. And literally I come back with the 2 beers and my father literally broke his racket on my nose as I passed behind him. And fortunately, the doctor was here, but beautiful doctor. But again, he was a doctor who was not aware of my Lyme's disease and weaknesses. Going back to the general anesthetic, so obviously I had neurological Lyme's disease. So my Lyme's disease from the age 3 onwards became neurological, giving me the fatigue, the digestive issue, the heart, the aura, and the mental kind of distress. Emotionally as well, I was really struggling.
Well, what does that mean? Give us more detail on what it meant to struggle. What were you struggling with?
So I think that I was in pain. But again, when you are a teenager these days, everybody is in pain. I've got my belief of why people are in pain, but my pain was definitely Lyme's disease related. Again, my heart, my hormones were all over the place. And yeah, I was feeling very alone, very sad. I was spiritually and emotionally confused. I had pain everywhere. You just ask yourself sometimes, even at this age, you are in pain emotionally, you prefer physical pain to emotional pain. So you start, at the time I was still playing volleyball. So for me, it's like playing volleyball was grounding me. Even so I was in pain, it was giving me that kind of exit from the emotional pain or the spiritual pain that I was suffering. I remember that I would have even burned myself a couple of times to stay away from that kind of emotional pain that I was going through. Anything physical was better as a pain than anything emotional or mental.
Okay. So when is the first time you heard the word Lyme or the words Lyme disease?
It's going to be terrible because around the age of 26 or 27, so I had been in practice already 3 or 4 years. And I had this patient of mine with ME and chronic fatigue as well. And very simply, I was treating her and she was getting better, but never getting to the point where she was functional. I remember her, so we are talking 20 years ago, and I was already in practice for 5 years, that she said, "Oh, could it be Lyme's disease?" And I was like, no.
Well, let's pause there for a second. So
No, but it's
did
important.
you know what Lyme disease was when
No.
no.
That's the point. It's like very ashamed of myself and very sad there.
No.
But you have to, you're a practitioner, you're devoted to what you do, and you go back to your career once in a while. I've been in practice 27 years. I'm an expert in Lyme's disease on one side. I'm an expert in chronic long-term conditions. I see a lot of patients with disease, cancer, Lyme's disease. And sometimes you've got patients who come too late with cancer and they die. And you've got, let's say, a dozen of patients in your head. I've treated 15,000 patients in my career so far. And you've got a dozen who comes to mind where you're like, I wish I was better at that time that I saw them, because I could have made a bigger difference. And this young lady was certainly about my age. She was certainly late 20s. I just didn't know what Lyme's disease was.
Okay.
And I was like some of the practitioners that I saw 10 years later myself, who were discarding me, saying, "You don't have Lyme's disease. You don't have anything. It's just all in your head." It's not that I was saying that it was in her head, but I failed. And I didn't know. I'm not trying to get, some approval or not, that I could have been. It's just the way it was. It's like, that's thanks to you, for example, practitioners get more aware, patients get more aware. I was not aware.
Let's build that out, because I think it's important for the patient community to have more empathy for, or certainly sympathy for, their doctors, because I think there are a lot of challenges. I want to build out one piece with you, but there are a lot of challenges in the doctor-patient relationship. But before we build that piece out, let's footnote that for a second, or I should say bookmark that for a second. Let's talk about your education between the time that you began your education as an osteopath and the time that you were now treating this patient who used the words Lyme disease and you were not familiar with it. So talk to us about your education and what type of medical training did you have up till that point?
I went into medicine. I did my first year of medicine at the age of 18. And then I did 4 years of osteopathic studies where you are taught to be safe, in the sense of, like a GP or doctor, you need to do a medical differential diagnosis, in the sense of, before saying, oh, it's a functional issue that you have, let's go back to your listeners. But you've got disease, you've got health, and there is a lot of things in between that doctors don't know why we've got this. And so as an osteopath, you work on that kind of functional kind of condition, but you need to rule out all that kind of medical spectrum of conditions that can be coming to your practice. And so you need to know what you are doing. So for 4 years, you study obviously osteopathy, but you study that kind of medical differentiation. By then, I've done already 5 years of studies. I went on to do a master in osteopathy and that's of interest for later, but I did a master in the physiology of stress, how stress affects the body. And then the reason why I became a scientist is because I wanted to understand how stress was affecting the energy of your body, how it affects the quantum biology of your body, how stress like Lyme's disease affects your body. So I was in practice by the age of 23, 24, and then did part-time, that's 3 years of studies to have my master in osteopathy. And back then, when I saw this lady, I had been in practice, actually at least studying medical for at least 8 years.
Okay. So
and still I hadn't heard from Lyme's disease.
Okay. So that's and I appreciate your humility. And I think it's important for all of us to be humble. And I certainly appreciate doctors being humble rather than riding on the white horse and believing that if they don't understand what's wrong with a patient, then it's all in the patient's head. So I want to compliment you for that mindset and for that confession that you made. But I think it's important for us to build out this piece for our listeners and for the people who are watching this video, because there is this concept of gaslighting that patients feel gaslit, and I don't think that's a healthy mindset to walk around with when you're a patient. And I'm going to build that out in a second. But B, and more importantly, I don't think it is a way of properly defining the relationship between a doctor and a patient. So let me explain to you what I mean by that, and let me get your reaction. So I don't think you failed your patient. I think the educational system failed your patient. And what we do when we go through our training, for your medical training, is that we are given frameworks that we're supposed to utilize, and we have prisms that we look through that allow us to see or define a problem that a particular patient has. So I think it would be fair of you to beat yourself up a little bit if you had been trained on what Lyme disease was, and you were trained on how to diagnose Lyme disease, and this was something that was a part of your education or part of your postgraduate education. That would then be failure. And I think, and I'd also be gentle with you in that regard as well, because I do think Lyme disease is a very complex disease, and it is very difficult to diagnose. And there are no good tests that you can use to diagnose Lyme disease. But let's put that aside for a second, and let's just focus on that experience that you had with your patient, where you described yourself as having failed that patient. I don't think you failed that patient. I think your education failed you, and your education failed that patient because you were not given training and frameworks that would have allowed you to come to the conclusion that this patient had a particular diagnosis. So give me a reaction to that.
A few days ago, a study came out saying that most autoimmune diseases are due to EBV, Epstein-Barr virus.
Okay.
And again, it's like, I've been in practice for 27 years. Because of the way I work, yes, I do relate to viruses affecting the core of our health and having immune reaction. And a few years ago, we said multiple sclerosis was related as well to Epstein-Barr virus and some hepatitis B and details. But my point is, we learn every day.
Yes.
And you're right. I mean, I don't beat myself up. I'm just aware that I wish I could have done better.
Of course.
And that's about it.
But let me ask you the question. What could you have done better? What could you have done differently at that time?
I became an expert in Lyme disease.
But you're not an expert in Lyme disease at that moment, right?
At the moment, I'm not. But what happened is, becoming an expert in Lyme disease, we are creating a community on our side as well to educate not only patients, but practitioners.
Yes.
And here today, we've got products that we created to help patients, but as well, especially help practitioners to help their patients. Because I went through this and I know how it feels. And that's what I don't want to repeat. The reason why I'm here today with you is to help people who suffered like me, suffered the pain on a physical level, on an emotional level, who are confused, who can't be able to do their job, as you said before, and be able to live their life to their fullest.
Okay, but let's come back to the moment that we're at now, where you described yourself as having failed that patient. That was a different type of professional pain that you were just describing to us. So yes, I know as a patient, you certainly had a passion for coming up with solutions to cure yourself, and then you wanted to share those with the world. But I want to focus on the pain that you had in that moment, and that you're still expressing now, the pain that you felt professionally, right? You also don't want other practitioners to feel that type of professional pain if they're as sensitive as you are, or you don't want practitioners to gaslight their patients by telling their patient there's nothing wrong with them because the practitioner, do not have the training or the frameworks or the education that they need in order to be able to help the patient, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I want to tease out the gaslighting piece of this, and I want to talk with you about the patient's responsibility in the relationship with the doctor, right? So that patients have sympathy or empathy for their practitioner, so that there can be a healthy relationship as opposed to an adversarial relationship. So I, again, challenge you to revisit in your own mind whether or not you failed that patient. And then I also want you to talk about how the patient reacted to you when you didn't have the ability to diagnose that patient with the disease that she had. So help me with that. What was the patient's reaction when she said to you, I think I may have Lyme disease, or asked you, do I have Lyme disease? What was your reaction, and how did that change the nature of the relationship between you and your patient?
So when you go and see a specialist or a practitioner, you expect your practitioner as a patient to be better and more knowledgeable than you are.
Okay.
When a patient comes to you and they say, I've got Lyme's disease, or could I have Lyme's disease? I should have been able to say, oh, one is, what is Lyme's disease?
Okay.
Which I should have been able to possibly go on the internet or try to do a bit more research. But no, it's in the back of my mind, I was stuck into my way of treating, which again, I got educated to treat this way, but I got educated in some ways to say, is there a medical diagnosis here to do? For me, there was nothing as such. It was chronic fatigue. There was ME. There was an adrenal cortisol dysfunction, like Lyme's disease.
And it was all those things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lyme's disease can do, and simply this patient may have had Lyme's disease, but I didn't have, as we discussed, and the knowledge. But you see, when a patient comes to you, and what I learned from this, possibly years later, and a practitioner who was a teacher of art, who is called Peter Blackgrave, who was in his 80s when I was a student, and he was always saying to us, the patient is always right. The patient always knows better. This is their life. They feel it. They know it. They may not have all the story, but they know certain things which you need to listen and put in your little notes. Lyme's disease. And you go home and you think about it and you revisit the story and you progress. So the relationship with this patient is, at the end, is like, I didn't treat her. And that's what I was going through myself. Is like, I was, when you've got someone who is completely stressed out, you help them to survive. And that's what I was doing. So I was seeing her regularly. It's like I was helping her to cope, be able to surrender to the different stresses of her life. But we were living a life, or she was living a life, which was limiting to 40% to what a life should have been. We were controlling everything to make sure that those 40% were great. But she was not great. But we made her great in those 40% because I was limited in my function as a practitioner. She was limited because she had certain underlying chronic Lyme's disease. At one point, the decision is, okay, I can't make you feel better. So you lose that relationship with your patient.
Well, we have to, again, revisit this relationship with the patient, right? Because there's another piece of this, which is, if you're a practitioner who is not using generally accepted medical practices for the way that you're treating your patient, which is another code for the frameworks that you were trained to use when you were going through the educational process, then you're putting yourself at risk. So not only are you limited by your education, you're also limited by the law, because the law is going to limit your ability to treat a patient within the scope of generally accepted medical practices, right? So you weren't trained on how to diagnose someone with Lyme disease. You weren't trained on how to treat someone with Lyme disease. You did not know what Lyme disease was. And you had legal limitations that limited your ability to take any steps to treat the Lyme disease. Now, that's not to say, because I do want to explore this, about what you could have done and what your patient could have done. But I do want to say focus on you beating yourself up a little bit here, because I do think this is a healthy conversation, and I want patients to see their doctors as people. I want patients to see their doctors as people who are struggling with limitations in their education, limitations of what the law allows them to do, and now trying to get to a place where you can help this patient get better. So let's talk about that. What kinds of things were you doing with your patient, and what was your patient doing in developing this relationship with you so that she could let you know what her needs were. She could let you know what wasn't working for her. So you can now take additional steps to try to help her figure out what the best steps would be. Because I think the biggest challenge in a doctor-patient relationship is, and if I were to be critical of the medical profession generally, it's that you're asking us to offboard or offload our health. You're not asking us to be partners. You're asking us to expect that you're going to know how to make us better. That illusion has been removed from me. I don't expect that a doctor has the capacity to make me better. I'm not offloading my health to anyone who has a medical degree. Right. What I'm doing is I'm looking to have a relationship with the practitioner so that we together can figure out what my onboard diagnostic system is telling me, what your diagnostic tools are telling you, and together we come up with a plan that allows me to get myself better, not asking you to make me better. So give me your reaction to that.
So I completely agree that you need to build practitioner-patient relationship to a point where we need the patient's participation. So 20 years later from this patient, I created all the system.
And we're going to get there.
No,
we're
but
going to get
it's
there.
but I always say I worked hard. You know, I'm devoted. I see a lot of patients. But the thing is, I may have created and become the best practitioner on the planet. Let's call it this way. You know, ego, no ego, it doesn't matter. It's just for the matter of your listeners and putting an idea there. Even so, I created the best thing in the world. You still need the participation of your patient.
Absolutely.
You need, or possibly a mother or a father, or which is going to create that little déclic or little information for that patient, like we do today. It's like we are sharing a conversation to be able to give possibly an opportunity to possibly one person in your listeners who is going to share with someone else, and we're going to make a difference. Because that information is going to allow that person to have the strength to participate into their journey to reach well-being.
Well, but it's more than validation, and I agree with you that one of the primary purposes of this podcast and the reason I do what I do in this passion project that we've created here at Tick Bootcamp is so that we can validate patients. But what we also want to do is we want to create an environment where patients can get the best outcome, right? And what we see are two extremes in the doctor-patient relationship, neither of which are healthy in my view. On the one side of the coin, which is the majority view, and certainly the way that I was encouraged or socialized to believe, that I'd walk into my doctor's office, my doctor would have all the answers, I would walk out with a quick solution, and I would get better, right? I was offloading my responsibility. In fact, I was told I didn't need to have any responsibility for my health, right? So that's one extreme. On the other extreme in the spectrum, we here in this community are young people, especially very sick people. You have to become your own doctor, right? Where essentially what they're doing is they're rejecting the system that they feel rejected by, and now what they're doing is they're trying out all kinds of things outside of the context of a doctor-patient relationship, right? And we have to be concerned about that extreme as well, right? We have to strike that balance where your professor's advice, which is the patient is always right. That doesn't mean the patient is always right. It means that the patient's onboard diagnostic system is something you have to encourage your patients to listen to and share with you so that you can bring that very important diagnostic tool into the analysis. And you also have to make sure that you have a relationship where the patient is accepting responsibility for their health. The patient's not going to be with you all the time, so the patient is going to have to engage in healthy lifestyle choices and behaviors so that they can improve their health, and not think that they can engage in unhealthy behaviors, come to you, have you fix them, and then everything is going to get better, right? But at the same time, of course, we have to allow our practitioners to be the professionals in our lives who are going to help us to understand how we can get better. And it's that healthy relationship where both parties are taking responsibility and both parties are participating and both parties are now getting to a place where that relationship allows for a successful outcome for the patient and for the doctor.
I agree. I'm going to tell you something because I'm not beating myself up, because the second time I heard of Lyme's disease, to answer your questions about earlier and to show a little bit the progression of the stories. So I had a young boy who came from, because you learn obviously, but a young boy who just flew in from Germany, arrived in the UK, and I received this message, and the mother was very distressed, and she says to me, "I need to come and see you with my son." And I'm like, okay. And we have got a practice which is very much family practice. And in fact, I see the boy, I start looking after him, and I said to the mother, "I'm really sorry, but I think that he has got meningitis." So we sent him to a hospital. And a couple of days later, the mother leaves me a message saying, "Thank you so much. He had encephalitis, and he had encephalitis because of Lyme's disease." And he got antibiotics for 2 weeks, and he got sorted. But that's when the second time, so as much as, again, I didn't know about Lyme's disease still. And by then I'm like early 30s. So already close to 10 years in practice in London. Finally, I'm like, okay, hear the word Lyme's disease. And myself, I had been ill for easily 10 years, like going to see practitioners a little bit all over the world. And I'm like, oh, actually, I do have Lyme's disease, but I've got it as a chronic. My neck is really stiff. I can't turn. I can't look up. But going back, it's like that patient-doctor relationship needs to be a healthy relationship. And as you say, we both have responsibilities and participation for me to keep learning, to keep progressing and giving better solutions to my patient when possible. And in the same way, the patient can't just be hiding. They need to engage. There is lots of opportunities to get better if we want to.
So you're on your own health journey. You now know it to be Lyme disease, but at the time you didn't. You hear Lyme disease from a patient the first time. You hear about Lyme disease as a post conversation with a patient who you had referred to a hospital. When is the first time you realize you have Lyme disease? And was this a self-diagnosis now based on the research you were doing after hearing Lyme disease from your patients? Or was this a diagnosis that you had gotten from a third-party doctor?
So when that patient was diagnosed with Lyme's disease,
This is the second patient.
patient due to the encephalitis, like the meningitis of encephalitis, was like, so first of all, it resonated with the first patient that talked to me about Lyme's disease. And in that period of 6 years or 10 years between the two patients, never heard of Lyme's disease. So we are talking 20 years ago. Huh? And then I'm like, oh, I think that I've got Lyme's disease. And so I start looking, obviously, on the internet. And
now, did you think you had Lyme disease because you saw similar symptomology?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I recognized where I was like, I may have Lyme's disease because I've got the same that this young boy had, but in a very chronic way, where his whole nervous system was in panic. Mine was, but because he was so chronic that obviously he was shown, or he was presenting itself in a different way. And so I started looking for practitioners who were specializing in Lyme's disease. And I went at the time to a place called Breakspears Hospital that you may have heard of.
What's the name of it?
Breakspears Hospital.
Okay.
And it was an hour away from London, very unconventional place. They sent my blood to in lab in Germany.
Yes, we've had Dr. Armin on
yes.
the podcast. He's a very, very good man. Very, very good interview.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are very close. And the blood test came back with obviously tick-borne disease and multiple co-infections.
So is there a particular practitioner that you were working with at that hospital that recognized that you had Lyme disease, or did you walk into the hospital and ask the practitioners if they believed that your belief that your symptomology was consistent with Lyme disease? How did that initial interaction proceed?
Yeah, good question. Looking back, I really went in saying, could I have Lyme's disease? They were very keen to do the blood test they were really specialized in all those kind of long-term chronic conditions, people really suffering. And they were like, we don't know what you have, but it's possible. So let's do all the blood tests. Could you have Lyme's disease, staphylococcus, streptococcus, heavy metals? So obviously I had the whole lot.
All right, so let's talk about that. So the doctor you're working with recommends a panel of tests. Now, were the panel of tests entirely with assays from Arm and Labs, or were there other tests?
Some tests stayed in the UK for the heavy metals.
Okay.
From what I remember, the normal kind of blood counts stayed in the UK, and the rest went to Arm and Labs. So at the time, yeah, I mean, he was doing all the panel already.
Okay, so you had the tick-borne illness panel from Arm and Labs.
Exactly.
And when you got the results back, or when your doctors got the results back, what did you test positive for?
So I had Borrelia, Bartonella, chlamydia, pneumo, EBV, Coxsackie viruses. I had quite a few.
Okay, so as it related to tick-borne illnesses, it was Borrelia and it was Bartonella.
Bartonella, yeah.
Okay.
But the tick-borne, yeah, if we go back to tick-borne disease, a lot of people can get from tick-borne diseases. They can get EBV as well.
Okay.
EBV.
I do want to focus on that with you. Yeah.
Candida.
So now, do you believe that you contracted EBV from a tick bite, or do you believe that the tick-borne illness suppressed your immune system and allowed the Epstein-Barr virus to no longer be managed by your immune system and therefore become symptomatic from EBV?
To my knowledge, I never had any symptoms of EBV before having those blood test results. But saying this, there are studies now who says that by the age of 1 year old, 50% of the kids have had EBV.
Yep.
So we are on an interesting kind of subject. But I know Epstein-Barr virus in my 30s, like active, where I was really unwell for a week, but I had already had all the blood tests done. So was it a second case of EBV?
Or just your immune system that, exactly. I mean, EBV is a part of, I think, all of our microbiome, right? And it's one of the things that we're all harboring. And in most cases, it's not symptomatic. And in most cases, our immune system is able to manage it. And with all these other bugs, right? I mean, one of the things that, one of my favorite podcast guests described this as a bag of bugs, right? We are more non-human than we are human. We have more bugs by count than we have cells in our bodies, right? So our body is constantly managing all of these different bugs until it can't, right? And that's really one of the dangers with Lyme disease, because in many cases, we're symptomatic with something like Epstein-Barr virus, but it's actually the Lyme that is causing the suppression of our immune system, and it's a presentation of that virus that our immune system can't manage anymore, which is why it's so difficult to diagnose, right? I mean, it's not only migrating symptoms, it's not like polymicrobial infection, it's also causing our immune system to dysfunction, and therefore a lot of other bugs that we picked up during the course of our lives are now starting to present.
Yeah, because in some ways the opposite is true. So you can have EBV as a child, let's say, which affect your immune system and doesn't allow you to be able to fight Lyme's disease.
Okay, that's fair. So the immunosuppression that you're suffering from the EBV makes you vulnerable to the tick bite and the germs that are spit into you from a tick bite. That's powerful and an important observation, right? We don't know if it's chicken or the egg either way, right?
Yeah, I mean, being in practice now and treating quite a few thousands, you realize that a lot of people get bitten, but they don't get Lyme's disease.
Yep.
And then in the same way, you're like, why me? And again, it's like we could go and push the situation, the conversation into long COVID vaccinations, which a lot of people have suffered from. But if you have got a weakness somewhere, that it is physical, emotional, mental, those kind of neurotoxins, because Lyme's disease is a neurotoxin, vaccines can be a neurotoxin, COVID is a neurotoxin, Staphylococcus, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus is a neurotoxin. So very simply, if you have got something weak inside you, it's going to go for that weakness. And we've seen it. We see it with Lyme's disease where you get a page or 10 pages really of different symptoms of Lyme's disease, which have confused the medical profession forever. But it's the same with COVID. It's the same with post-vaccine issues or trauma, where nobody shows the same kind of symptoms. I mean, yes, the point of entry for a vectorial disease is a bite. For COVID was coronavirus, so it was the airways, but then it goes to your weakest point. And that's what has
but
been
it migrates through your entire body.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's stay with your diagnosis. So you now have a diagnosis, right? You had the tick panel, Armin Labs, one of the top labs in the world. Now thankfully, who had actually already tested more than almost 300,000 Lyme samples, unbelievable 300,000 Lyme samples at Armin Labs. How did you feel? You were unwell from when you were 3 years old now until you're in your mid 30s. How did you feel when you finally had a diagnosis?
Best news ever.
All right.
It's one of those things. Is the problem with those long-term conditions and chronic diseases, again, is you want to be seen. You're like, help. And as long as nobody puts a name, not necessarily a name, but like be able to say, oh, you've got something, or I understand you now. It's not that. It's the first point of contact, again, with being a patient. I'm like, okay, I understand what I have, so let's find the solution. We know the solution is another matter. But being diagnosed was a relief.
So generally what we see on this podcast is there is euphoria after you finally get your diagnosis. You are seen, you are validated, but then it changes, right? We start to have a lot of challenges with trying to overcome this disease. And what was euphoric for a short period of time now becomes anxiety, because this is not an easy disease to treat. So talk to us about your path. After you had your euphoria, you were seen, you were heard, you had an answer to a puzzle that was more than 30 years a part of your life. What happened after you started to really dig into Lyme disease, and what kinds of concerns did you develop about your capacity to heal?
Yeah, it's that capacity to heal, actually. It's a good point, because on one side, yes, you've got the microorganism and the immune dysfunction, but on the other is like, do you have the foundation of well-being inside your body to be able to get better? So it's always, we'll go into this later, but on one side, Pasteur was saying the microorganism is the cause and the root cause of your disease. And Claude Bernard in France was saying, if you haven't got the right foundation, you will create disease. And so
the two brilliant Frenchmen had a debate that is ongoing to this day in the medical community. Is it the bug or is it the terrain?
Exactly.
Right. And of course, Pasteur is the most famous, probably one of the most famous in the history of medicine. He is, of course, credited with germ theory, but at the very same time that Pasteur was making his argument, there was another brilliant French scientist who was arguing, no, it's not the bug, it's the terrain. But he's sort of like in the annals of history, he's kind of forgotten about. I mean, but we know it. He was right? Wasn't he right?
He was right. But we've got another theory as well now. So,
all right.
But it's another subject. So at the time, the doctor says to me, okay, we start with antibiotics, but you've got heavy metals as well. So I had the quantity of heavy metal of mercury, which was 600 times more than normal.
Did you eat a lot of fish? Is that what was the mercury issue?
I mean, again, we can talk about heavy metals in relation to Lyme's disease if you want, and the nerves, our theory as well, related to all of this. But like I had 600%, you could find mercury in my blood. Like, it's not like hair samples and things like that. It was really like in the blood. And so the doctor was like, okay, let's start with antibiotics. And my terrain was so bad that after 3 days of antibiotics, my body collapsed completely. I had already so much digestive issues. I mean, my digestive issues well, I was always having a lot of reflux in my 20s. The relationship between the heart and the esophagus and the liver being so close to each other anatomically and nervously that very simply the heart infection, the 6 heart infections that I had that weakened my gut as well. And taking the antibiotics, very simply, I was not able to. I started suffering from, I was passing water, literally. It's like, it was not even brown water. It was like literally mucus coming out of my body. And this lasted for months and months and months. And literally they started saying to me, okay, let's do IV antibiotics because you can't take on the oral antibiotics. In between, we had change of antibiotics, obviously. Let's go for the brain first. Let's do doxycycline, minocycline. They play, which sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't work. And then I started doing the IV antibiotics, which was horrible.
So the oral antibiotics you had initially, what were it was doxycycline and minocycline?
So yes, exactly, yeah.
Right, and
that's what I started
and
with.
that ultimately destroyed your gut to the point where you were having the runs, and you were describing your stool as no stool, but just mucus passing out of you, right? So then they said, all right, well, let's change the vehicle for giving you this antibiotic. So we're going to move away from an oral form of antibiotics, and we're going to give you an IV form of antibiotics, or is that what it was?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Did you have a port? How did you?
Exactly, yeah. So I had to stay in hospital for quite a while. So sometimes I was staying the day, sometimes I was staying 3-4 days, but no improvement. And so they were like, okay, let's try to remove your heavy metals first. And so I went into what they call a chelation. So I went through chelation,
what is chelation?
So it's a process to remove heavy metals.
What is the process?
So in fact, they give you a chemical product. Some of it is going to pull the metals from your cells. So it's what we call an intracellular chelation. So you pull the heavy metals from the cells to get it into the blood. And then very simply, there is a second process, which is, okay, it's in your blood now. So we need to bind it. So we have an extracellular kind of chemical product, which is
a binder.
A binder. So it's going
to. Do you know what binder you were using?
I don't at the time.
Okay. And then what happens after it's bound?
And normally you are supposed to get it out through bowel movements. But my bowels were not working, and I hadn't been working certainly for 20 years. So, as I was saying, you were asking specifically the symptoms that I had between 3 and 18. My gut was always the biggest weakness, I would say.
Now, were you taking antibiotics during your childhood, during the years of 3 and 18? And do you think that's what was causing your gut issues?
It's even worse than that. So I'm a little bit complex, where my mom is one of the only person in France who had a general anesthetic during a pregnancy. So it's not legal anymore. You can't have general anesthetic during pregnancy. But my mom was suffering from a particular gland in her throat. And the doctors thought she had a cancer of a parotid gland. So general anesthetic when she was 8 weeks or 10 weeks pregnant, which is where the heart is formed. So my weakness with the heart, where Lyme's disease was in my heart, the 3-centimeter hole in my heart, which I had to fix. So the idea is she has general anesthetic. Again, to your listeners, it's not allowed anymore to have a general anesthetic during pregnancy. I was born with an immunity which was really bad, because obviously I was born with a cortisol level, which was not efficient. So my immune system as a baby, which is the reason why up to the age of 3, I was like, so I had all the infection of the world. So when I was born, I haven't had the normal bowel movements for about 1.5 years. So always diarrhea, runny stomach, mucus. So already then, I was born fragile. We were talking about the terrain and everything. I was born fragile. And so I had the digestive issues, but then I had They removed my adenoids, they removed my tonsils. I had twice ear surgery by the age of 3 years old, all of this. So I had all those general anesthetic, I had all those scar tissues, I had all those drama, emotional, physical before I was born, or when I was 3 years old.
Small child, yeah.
When I was 30 and trying to do all those treatments, my gut was so bad, which we come back to that terrain. I was so weak that very simply treating Lyme disease was almost impossible. And that he was doing antibiotics, that he was doing chelations, that he was doing the different protocols that you find on the market these days, Cardon and others. Sometimes you had tinctures. The tinctures have got alcohol in them, and I was not able to use the tinctures because the tinctures have got alcohol. My liver and my guts are not working.
Right, because the carrier was alcohol.
And so it's a silver lining again. It's like being a practitioner, as I'm learning your patients and yourself being a patient. It's like you can't invent it. It gives you the opportunity to raise your game. And so after 3-4 years of trying lots of different things, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, I went to India, to China, I went to Switzerland, Germany, all the bioresonance medicine, came to America, obviously, followed the Dr. Horowitz protocol, and everything which was there, I took. There is one protocol which is salt. You may have heard of, or you take a gram of salt every hour.
I've not heard that. Whose protocol is that? Do you know?
I don't remember the name of the protocol, but very simply, you do a gram of salt and a gram of vitamin C every hour. And so you do this for weeks and weeks. That was one protocol, which was around 15 years ago. And I haven't seen it actually anymore, but you could find anything on the internet at the time. And I just didn't, everything was making, it's not that it was not making me better, but everything was helping, but I was not getting better. So that was 5% here, 5% there. Orthodox medicine helped a little bit. Complementary medicine helped a little bit. Traditional and medicine and contemporary medicine helped a little bit, but I was not getting better. And my patients were not getting better.
Okay. So we call that the carousel of doctors, where you're just going from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor, and you're on the carousel, and the carousel of doctors is not working for you. How long, and for you, it was an international carousel of doctors. You were all over the world, but nothing worked for you, right? You were getting some marginal improvement with every one of the different protocols that you were doing, but you were not getting better. So what was the game changer for you? What allowed you to get from being very unwell to now being as healthy as you appear to be today?
So being a practitioner, as an osteopath, you work on body and you understand that the body is matter and energy.
All right.
So when you do an ECG, an EEG, you do an MRI, you see the electricity and the particles inside your body. And so we, as an osteopath, and I saw the body in a different way than just the orthodox medicine of chemistry. And I thought, you know what, I treat patients a certain way. I'm taking chemical products to treat my body, but actually I am only 1% of matter and I'm 99% of energy. So why giving chemistry when actually we are 99% energy, and that energy is influencing the matter and the matter is influencing the energy.
Okay.
And so that was my way of practicing as an osteopath. As a classical osteopath, which comes from America, osteopathy is like you unblock the physical body and then you let the energy flow through the body. That's what you do. And you make sure that that body suddenly connect to that beautiful universal energy and that energy coming from the ground. So we are very holistic. We see the body as a whole. We see the body as chemistry and energy. And we understand that microorganisms are as well working in the same kind of way. They are matter and they are energy. So trying to work on them only through chemistry is possibly not the right way. And so we set up, so I've been in practice 27 years. And 10 years ago, we created a research center in my practice. And we started trying to figure out how to integrate everything we learned, everything we tried, and deliver a science and a way of treating chronic Lyme disease and acute Lyme disease, or helping patients to treat their own Lyme disease. We had a vision or an understanding of the body works like this, is we needed to create a technology to allow us to treat the body not only through chemistry, but with chemistry and biophysic medicine. So you heard of bioresonance, you heard of homeopathy and things like that. So we don't work in bioresonance and homeopathy. So we integrate, so we created a technology which allows us to reintegrate low frequency, low energy into everyday products. And so what we wanted to do is we understand that the body is made of water. So we are made of 99.9% of molecular water. We understand that stress can influence that water which is in our bodies, that water which is a structured, dynamized system. That water is there to shape your body, is going to create cells, it creates systems and organs. But as well, that water facilitates chemical reaction. But that water is also made of atoms, electrons, and particles. So water is that kind of bridge between the biochemistry and the biophysics. And we are like, okay, that water needs to be working perfectly well for your immune system to work well, for your organs to be working well, for the different shapes and communications of your body to be working well. So we are like, okay, how do we restore the normal function of your body, your well-being, and that water? And so we come back to the fact that Pasteur is saying, okay, you need to cleanse the body for that water to be working and for the body to work better. But in the same time, you're like, okay, that water, which is our terrain, needs to be thriving and be nourished the right way to be able to do the job it needs to do. So I came up with the technology to create a particular liquid intelligence, what we call, which is a formulation. And we have got two products, one to cleanse the body for the water inside the body to work better. And we have got a product to nourish and allow the body and the terrain to thrive. And that liquid intelligence is a matrix of water, botanicals, vitamins, electrolytes, but it's biochemistry plus biophysical intelligence, because we want that liquid to work on the biochemistry of the body, but as well on those biophysics, those energy flows of the body. And so when we created that product, or those products, that liquid intelligence, we had in mind, okay, we can't get rid of Lyme disease, or it's very difficult to get Lyme disease, the right medication. It's very difficult for chemicals to reach the blood-brain barrier. It's very difficult for chemicals to go and affect the cyst of the Lyme disease. It's very difficult for chemicals to destroy the biofilms associated to Lyme disease. We are like, the body has got, and that's what we learn in osteopathy, the body has got the tools to self-regulate itself. So we created those products that I started using myself and got better. So we have in our mind, we created Equil. And Equil has got two systems. There is the system of saying, okay, your body can self-regulate. And that's what we created with the products. But then we have got Equil science as well, working on a pharmaceutical level, saying some people don't manage to self-regulate. So we need to create a pharmaceutical kind of biophysic drugs. So that's what we are working on as well in France, where I've got a research and development lab, which is a deep tech, innovative company. And we are working on the first biophysic medicine to be able to stop the growth of the microorganism. And we've got some publications which are coming out early next year. And so we are treating myself, first of all, that way. And then we did some tests. I mean, like the beautiful story is we sent in Dr. N, gave us the opportunity to do some in vivo testing, so on mice testing with a colleague of his in Finland. We sent, so it's not those products here, but it's the pharmaceutical products that we are working on. So we were able to send our solutions to a lab in Finland. And this is about 8-10 years ago. And this is when we knew we were on something. So we sent that solution to this lady doctor, which the name will come back to me, in Finland. And we did the test in vitro and in vivo, so on mice. I'm really sorry. We for science, we had to do it the right way at the time. And very simply, the anxiety, as you were saying, is that was two things. It's like, did I get better because I self-treated myself and everything is in my mind? Like all those doctors over 20 years have been telling me, it's all in your head, Frédéric. And so is it in my mind that I'm better? Or was it because we really did a discovery? And so the anxiety was really high in the sense of you need to know that to grow microorganisms from Borrelia, let's say, and Bartonella, it takes 5 days. So you need to incubate for 5 days the microorganism. So you have to send the products, and they need to grow the microorganism, and then they need to inject the mice. So the whole process takes a good 2 weeks. And so I received the results as with my parents. And I remember falling on the floor. You are talking about the euphoria. And like suddenly I'm not mad. It did work. We stopped the growth of the microorganisms.
In your body?
In
your body.
So that was on the mice.
Okay.
On the mice model. But I did manage to treat myself the same way. So we created 2 systems, or we are one which is official, which is we created 2 food supplements or 3 food supplements with liquid intelligence. That liquid intelligence is able to reach the biochemistry part of the body and the biophysic intelligence of your body. And then the pharmaceutical branch of what we are doing, we want to create what we call a medical device. So we don't create a pharmaceutical drug because we work in biophysics. So you work like a medical device is when you affect the physic of your body. Like my lens in my eye is a medical device because it affects the physical part of your body. And so we are working on the medical device, which is over a period of 3 to 5 years. So that's one of the reasons I'm in New York, all the funding and those kind of things that we need. And that's where I started getting better about 10 years ago. And gradually, so 2 years ago, we put those products on the market and with great success with our patients and communities. And we are working in France on the pharmaceutical side as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I want to build that out a little bit more based on your experience and your journey, right? So you from the time you went to the first hospital outside of London until the time that you started working on some of these products and using some of these products, you were treated all over the world. And in almost every case, it sounds to me, based on the chronology that you were giving us earlier, that they were just trying to kill the bugs. That the focus was largely the Pastorian germ theory, where we were just killing the bugs, which I can share with you based on now the over 700 interviews we've done on camera and the substantially even larger number of interviews, that is not a pattern that ever works. That what we see here at Tick Bootcamp, and we call our framework the PARM framework, is that you actually have to go through a 4-step process if you're going to be able to overcome this disease. And the first step we've defined, which is the P in PARM, which is prehabilitation, right? That you need to get your body ready for the battle. You have to get your detox pathways open. You have to get the heavy metals out of your body. You have to start moving again. You have to start working on your sleep. You have to start working on your nutrition and the nutritional values. You have to build a foundation and go through a cleansing that allows your terrain to then be ready for the second phase, which is the assist, right? The A in PARM, right? Where now you're assisting your immune system by reducing the microbial load, right? So what happened with you, you had a terrain that was already from birth already in a disease state. You had a gut that was not functioning. And what they did is they hit you with antibiotics. And when they hit you with antibiotics, it only made your terrain more diseased. It made it more challenging, as opposed to bringing you through this process of getting your body ready for that if you needed that. And it sounds to me that it wasn't until you came up with your own formulations and you started really rebuilding your terrain that you got better. And all of the killing that you did before that did nothing but make you sicker and sicker, and certainly gave you only marginal improvements until you went to the next horse on the carousel, right? So it really was when you finally came back to the foundation of your training and you came back to the foundation of your education, where you decided that you were going to take a unique approach to treating the terrain, that you finally got better.
You're absolutely right. The way we create the protocol as well ourselves is you need to do the foundation. So being an osteopath and a well-being practitioner, when we nourish the body, to make it thrive, to make it better, to create those foundations, we have in mind that the body is like a house. So we've got the brain, the heart, the digestive, urogenital system, which the electricity, the plumbing, the kitchen, and the foundations of your body. They need to work properly. A lot of people say, oh, the gut is the most important thing in the world, but actually, which is your kitchen in your house.
Okay.
But actually, the kitchen is nothing if you haven't got the right electricity, the right plumbing, and the right foundation. So actually, it's the interconnection of all those different floors of your house, which needs to be working for your body to be working. And those foundations are that, the brain, the heart, the digestive, urogenital, but everything is linked up by the cells of your body, the 30,000 trillions of cells of your body, which have got a cell membrane. They have got mitochondria, the water in the cell, which we go back to water.
Right.
And all of this is linked together with blood flow, nerve flow, immunity, lymphatic system. So what we do on our side, and which goes back to what you are saying, is like, okay, we want the brain, the heart, the digestive, urogenital system to work well, the liver to work well. We want the cell membrane to work well, because again, the cell membrane we were talking about biophysic medicine, and the cell membrane needs to be able to receive the photons from the sunshine and create the vitamin D and all that biophysics and all this energy flows comes through the cell membrane and the water inside the body. And so you need all those structures to be working. And so we support all this cellular system, but as well the organs and the systems with one particular product made with liquid intelligence. And as you say, if you haven't got the right foundation, then you don't manage to go through the process of getting rid of microorganisms. But I'm just going to add something. I did this analogy with a house. You can have the most beautiful house in the world, but you can have rats, mice, mold, you can have Lyme disease, viruses, bacteria, fungi, heavy metals. There is another problem, is sometimes the house can have a bad energy. And that's the biophysic part. Can be the emotions, every feelings that you felt, or anything you've seen, you've resonated with, heard. The body keeps a score, the house keeps a score. There is that energy stored inside your body. And you can try to work on the foundation or work on the microorganism chemically. If you don't work on this energetic pattern, that's still a pillar in your health recovery.
Oh, for sure. We are energetic beings. There's no denying that. So bring it back to now your experience. So your experience was you were sick for most of your life. You struggled with getting a diagnosis. You finally got a diagnosis. You have a lot of resources, in part because of your training and your education, but for other reasons. You have a lot of resources. You travel around the world trying to get better, but you don't get better. but you finally find a way of getting better. And that began when you went back to the foundation of your educational training, and you went back to looking at the terrain, defined more broadly than I think most people would generally define it. But it's not just your chemical terrain, but also your energetic terrain and your spiritual terrain. You start looking at your terrain, and when you go back to the terrain, that then leads you to a place where you begin to now create a different set of products. You use that different set of products, which then improves your terrain, and your improved terrain allows you to clear now the bugs that were causing your symptoms, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now help us to understand what each of these products are and how that put you in a position where it wasn't using something that would kill the bugs that allowed you to get better, but it was just the opposite. It was allowing you, it was you cleaning up your terrain and improving your terrain, defined as broadly as you defined it, that allowed the body to clear the bugs and allowed the body to heal itself. So give us an outline of what these products are and how that helped you to do that.
Can I go back on one subject?
Of course.
So we talked about Pasteur.
Yes.
And we talked about Claude Bernard. So one is the terrain, and we agree 100%. And one is the microorganism or the macrotoxins and macrotraumas. PTSDs can be really a cause of you're disease.
Okay.
So I treated a patient who had Lyme's disease, treated the Lyme's disease with someone. There was no Lyme's, and again, I agree with you that sometimes the tests don't really show everything, but she was free of a Lyme's disease. She had a child. That child at 2 years old had no Lyme's disease, but the child was not able to talk or didn't have any hair growth at all. She didn't have any microorganism. Her terrain seemed quite good. But actually, the interesting part is the way we work, we could feel that that little child was carrying the energy in a terrain of the microorganism.
Okay.
So you see, let's say you take Borrelia. Borrelia is a chemistry and an energy. You take antibiotics, it treats the chemistry, but possibly leaves the energy. Possibly.
Okay.
That's our way, a little bit of thinking. But I don't want to go. But the idea is like that energy which is carried by the mother still can be passed on into the child. And so you have got a child who has got no Lyme's disease on a test, but energetically can carry. I know, it's a conversation, but can carry something. And then when we treat the child with the products, suddenly she started talking and she started like hair got better. So again, it's practice talking. So it's through practice that we have built our concepts and our products. But so my point is the terrain can be affected by microorganisms energetically. That was my point. So,
okay. No,
it's just like you can improve the terrain as much as you want, boosting it if you still have the energy of the microorganism. And I believe this is one of the reasons sometimes people have got flare, even so they don't have any disease anymore. I mean, I know that the immune system can be the reason for the flare, but I believe energetically it can be an issue as well. But the question was how the products work. So again, so we've got that liquid intelligence that we work with a double patent technology.
All right, so that's important that you have patented this technology, and you've also been recognized and received awards for the development of this technology. So why don't you talk about that for a quick minute?
Yeah. So the awards was been recognized in 2024 as Osteopath of the Year.
Congratulations.
In the UK. And then the wellbeing products that we created and the platform got as well an award of wellbeing, Startup of the Year. And then this year I've been given in Times Square the top 100 influential global leaders in the world.
Congratulations.
And then a few weeks ago, we've been given the Technology of the Year award for what we are doing about chronic conditions and microorganisms. And not only Lyme's disease, we work really strongly on antibiotic resistance bacteria as well, and the use of too much chemicals in our world intoxicating the world itself. So it's not only human beings, but the world around us. But to go back, the idea is we created a technology about 5 years ago, is double patented, and we use that technology to electrovibrate the liquids that we are creating. And those liquids, they are called liquid intelligence. So we have got one to cleanse the body and one to create and support the foundation of your body.
Okay, so this product here is the product that you would use for cleansing the body?
So the Maintain, which is really a product which is there to nourish your brain, your heart, your digestive, your genital system. Every cells of your body affects the cell membrane, the structured water that you need, affects your liver function, your immune system, and then it's full of collagen as well for your joint, hair, nails, and skin.
Okay, so
that's the foundation. That's what you were saying.
So
that's our products specifically.
So give the listeners and the viewers now an outline of how often you would be taking that product and how would you take the product.
So there is no alcohol, there is no chemicals. We really, again, from experience, we know that we need to be really careful with long-term sufferer, what they can take, what they can swallow or not. But the idea is very simply, you need to shake the product for 5 seconds because you want to dynamize the product.
Okay.
You want that product to be liquid intelligence, chemistry-based, with the botanical, the water, the vitamins, the electrolytes. But then you want that beautiful dynamized water to be able to reach as well every cells of your body.
All right, so give us.
So you take
how much of it you're going to take?
Half a teaspoon.
Okay.
In the morning and the evening. So you do 5 ml in the morning, 5 ml in the evenings to build up the foundation of your body.
Okay.
To make sure that, as you said before, you have the foundation and all the process to be able to cleanse your body. That's the products we use to thrive.
Okay.
And once you are well, literally, that's what we recommend for the rest of your life.
Okay. Now, this product, the Reset.
The Reset. So what we were saying is completely right. You need the right foundation, but you need the body as well, or you need to help the body as well to shift what is toxic for the body. So as a practitioner, we see 3 things which are toxic inside the body. One is the microorganisms, one is the microtoxin, and one is the microtraumas. Microtraumas being PTSDs and physical and emotional. The microorganism, obviously, viruses, bacteria, fungi, parasites. So in our formulations, we have everything here to stimulate your immune system, to support your immune system to go and get rid of the microorganisms. For the microtoxins, we've got everything to support your lymphatic system, your liver function, to support, again, the move of the microtoxins. Detoxification.
Okay.
And then you've got everything for microtraumas. The microtraumas being PTSDs. You need to remember that in Chinese medicine, we always say PTSDs, that it is physical or emotional, they will create stagnation in your blood, in your lymph, and your circulation. So we created in that formulation something to be able to really get the flow going in any kind of part of your circulation.
Okay, so now...
And the combination of the two are literally helping you. And this one, so to go back on our protocol.
The Reset.
So the Reset. So the microorganisms, because if you do it well or too much, you can have a Hux reaction. So very simply, if you do it too much, you can have a Hux. So the idea, and again, it's not a pharmaceutical product, it's literally when you have got a long-term sufferer, we recommend to do this every day, but this one to do it only once a week.
Okay.
And you do it once a week for 5 weeks, for example. And then gradually you start doing it every 3 to 4 days. we know that the replication of the microorganism is about 3 to 5 days, as I was saying, in vivo. So when you do it once a week, it's just to stabilize your body. So as you said, foundation first, stabilize the microorganism. And then once your body is strong enough, then you do it more often. You do it every 3 to 5 days, because that's the ratio of renewal of that microorganism.
Okay.
And at one point, you are in a place where you can do it every day, but you need to be already after 8 or 9 weeks. And there is a point at 8 or 9 weeks of the protocol, the deep reset that we do it over a period of 3 months minimum. But at 8 weeks, you wake up one morning and it's like something has lifted. It's like there is a change in your physiology, which is like, oh, my body is starting to take over. So it's not the products working anymore. It's like there is a shift. And consumers and patients really feel that shift around 8 to 10 weeks, depending on how they manage to do the protocol.
Okay, so tell me about the rest of the products that you have here.
So those are the same. I just wanted to show that, like, very simply, it's liquid.
Okay, and what about the packages?
So you know very well that when you deal with Lyme's disease, you need to deal with the terrain and the chronic infection and surviving. But in the same time, you've got everyday problems. So we created a range of products, and they are mainly patches with what we call cellular intelligence. So very simply, I'm wearing one here. So the patch is applied on your skin, and in the patch, you've got a liquid, which is a liquid with cellular intelligence, which is made of water, structured water, essential oil, and an electromagnetic field, or low frequency, low energy. Because everyday life means when you have got a chronic conditions, you can get stress, you can get a little bit of anxiety, you can get mood issues, you can have immunity issues, or you can have sleep issues. We've got another one for energy. So very simply, what happens is that, yes, you do your protocols to really treat the root cause of your issues, but we all have challenges every day. So for everyday challenges, we created a little solution. And again, it's the practitioner talking. It's like when you see patients, it's like, yes, you want to treat the root cause, but there are plenty of signals here and there. I'm fatigued. My mood is affected. I get sinus infection, ear infection. My immunity is not good. We've got the Be Clear. So that's the reason why we came up with a range of products. It's a range of solutions. To be honest, we've got as well a digital wellbeing platform, because as I said to you, the terrain is important. The terrain is, you need to treat the physical body, the terrain on a physical level, but on an emotional level as well. So we've got affirmations online on Spotify, which allows you to cleanse and nourish your body. Again, we are always like Pasteur in mind and Claude Bernard in mind, where you need to be well on an emotional level, or you need to remove all the emotional traumas inside your body that you have acquired or possibly inherited as well. Transgenerational stress come and create a terrain, as you know, which can be weaker, and you need to rebuild that terrain, not only through food supplements, but as well through affirmations or meditation and things like that. So we offer for free a digital well-being platform where people can listen to the affirmations. Because if you take my example, it's like, why did he go to my gut? Why did he go to my heart? And I'm gonna be cruel in what I'm saying, but actually getting rid of the microorganism is possibly the easiest part. That's my point of view now, where I am after the experience. The problem is, why me? And the terrain, as you say, is essential. But the terrain is biochemistry and biophysics. So you need to have that double approach of chemical products or chemical kind of help, but as you need that energetic, emotional support as well to get rid of the abandonment issues that you may have had, or abuse issues that you may have had, which lingers inside your body and creates a little open door for either the microorganisms to settle and be happy, or the microorganism not to leave because it's such a happy place there, which goes back to what you were saying about the terrain. We just have an approach which is multi-layered because we see the body as body, mind, energy. And we say mind because we work on the body to affect the cells of your body and the energy of the body. And we work on the energy to work on the cells of the body and the body itself. And the mind, if we talk about consciousness and things like that, every cells of your body has got a mind of its own. So very simply, you really need to be able to have that physical approach, energetic approach to affect the mind of every cell, for them to reset themselves, for them to have the right foundations to reach your well-being and be able to get rid of your Lyme's disease, but as well to be able to have longevity, have a good metabolism, a good self-regulation of your body. And that's what we try to do.
So let's tie this up and now make the connection between now the osteopath that you are and the entrepreneur you are, and that patient you said you had failed. Right? You had this experience with this patient who brought up Lyme disease to you for the first time. And because of your sensitivities, because of the outcome not being what you wanted it to be at that time, you were suffering, and you've been suffering for many years over that loss. I mean, I saw it in your face as you were sharing that story with me. But of course, that suffering is what was the most important signal for you to ultimately focus on a disease state that you now created all of these products for. So as we wind down this podcast, talk about how that was a really important part of your personal journey, to go through that challenge, to not be able to overcome that challenge, so that you can ultimately become the person who was able to create these products that will now scale and help many people, many more people than the one person you weren't able to help that first time you heard the word Lyme disease.
It's true that I take a lot of things to heart. My patients are very important for me. They are family in a lot of ways. When you are devoted, you really want to do your best for them. Again, in the right relationship, which is the subject we talked about. Again, it's not failure, and I take on everything that you've said, and I think it's beautiful and very kind. But all those kind of difficulties in your life, you've got two ways. You either dig a hole and life is terrible, or you're like, there are ways of surfing the wave of all those different stresses, and what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So Lyme's didn't kill me. This lady didn't die from Lyme's disease. She got better, not through me, but she was like a lot of my patients who were not getting better, me not getting better. They allow me to see a gap in the medical system. Again, not a failure. It's just like the 20th century and 21st century of the medical world is in progression, into rearrangement and self-reorganization. We see that now we use nanorobots to get rid of cancer cells. And so it's very interesting to see the progress of medicine. But we all need to take responsibility of the patients we have let down, possibly, or what we can do better in the future to help people that needs us now for Lyme's disease, for example.
Well, not that the patient will let down, the patient who put us in a position where we could now learn the frameworks we needed to learn to get better ourselves, and then to scale those frameworks into products that we can now share with the world. So where can folks get in touch with you? How can they work with you, and how can they purchase your products?
As you're aware, I'm based in London. I've got a beautiful practice. But what we created is Equil and Equil Science.
Can you spell that, Equil?
Equil is A for Alpha, E for Echo, Q for
Queen,
U for Uniform, I for Island, and L for Lola. So Equil. So we created Equil, which is a distribution platform, equil.com. And then Equil Science, which is the R&D lab in France. And we are creating a beautiful community, which is going to be called Equil Living. And very simply, people can reach out to me on support@equilliving.com. Not only patients or consumers, but practitioners who want to entertain the idea of testing our products and deliver them to their patients. People can text me, email me, buy the products. I guide people, so people can email me. It's me responding because I care, and we've been doing this now for quite about 6 months now that we launched the products outside of the practice with great success. We are very happy, but people need help. As you said, is like they are responsible. So if they decide to email us, we've done all the hard work, but they need to join in, and we give them the support and the advice of how to progress with their treatments. And then we are so keen to come here. We were so keen that we are offering your listeners 30% off.
Well, thank you.
If they are using, I think, a particular code, which we can share in.
We'll put it in the show notes. So yeah, please have your staff send it to Matt, and we'll put that in the show notes so folks can have that discount code. So we'll thank you. So thank you for coming all the way from the UK. It's really been a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for being our first in studio interview. It was really a pleasure to meet you.